Welcome to the 1 to 9 podcast for interesting insights and knowledge from animals and other beings within multidimensional realms. Well, hello. Welcome to another 1 to 9 podcast. I'm Karin and
I'm Diana.
And we're here today. I know, we're still not 100% sure how our names are resonating with this podcast. We're here today with a whole bunch of fairies.
Yes, they're fairies from in and around both our houses. I don't know if this is actually the correct name for them. We're going to be asking them what they call themselves. But there's house fairies that have been running around my house for the last couple of days, just racing up and down the hallways. And then
they're racing up and down the hallways because they have something to say and they want to be on the podcast, right?
Yeah, they were just so excited, right? And then there's some plant fairies, and then the outside fairies. And then Karin has got her art fairies, and also the house fairies, which actually seem to be of smaller stature than my house fairies, which is kind of interesting. And then there's also the Chincoteague house fairies, who will be communicating with us via some kind of device that they have there. Okay.
And what about flower fairies?
Oh, the flower fairies, yes. Okay. Can't forget them.
Right, so we may not be talking to all these fairies today, but we'll get to them one by one and see. So who wants to talk first? What fairy group is first in line to say something?
Oh, I forgot another category of fairies.
Okay.
The cat attendant fairies.
Oh, cat attendant fairies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And we have Ollie the cat with us today.
And the other cats are with us in spirit.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so who will be talking to us today? This is kind of interesting. Karin's house fairies.
Oh, my house fairies, the little house fairies.
Yes, the little house fairies.
And you're saying they're smaller in stature than your house fairies. You mean about half the size?
Yeah, half the size.
But not half as fairy-like or half as prominent.
No. They're just half the size, that's all.
Just littler house fairies.
Yeah.
What do you think makes one house fairy group smaller than another?
I don't know, but the ones that you have that are in your house, okay, they seem to like, I don't know the correct terminology for this because I'm not really a mountain climber, but they've got grappling hooks.
Rappelling
hooks and ropes, and they seem to like climbing up the windows. Like they throw their hook up and then they climb up the rope. They're doing this around the windows and up your radiators.
Oh my!
They seem to like doing that. They're
all climbing around and having fun, like
yeah.
Mountaineer fairies.
That's right, Mountaineer fairies. Yeah.
Do they like the string of lights I have around my room?
Yes, they do. And
do they want me to turn it on right now?
Well, what they do sometimes is actually use them as tight ropes.
So they can walk almost all the way around the circumference of my room.
Right.
That's interesting.
I mean, that could be why they're smaller, because if they're bigger, they would have a harder time doing this stuff. Oh, let me ask them.
Yeah.
Because
so
far I haven't really asked them anything.
Yeah, like we need to find out from them what they...
Yes, okay. Okay, so they're telling me they're descendants from a long line of, they said rappelling fairies, but mountaineering fairies could be the same thing.
And why would they have landed in my house? I live in the city.
Yes, it's a good question. Okay, some of them came down from where you were previously. Because
in a former life or from Erie, Pennsylvania?
From Erie, Pennsylvania.
Oh, they came with me.
Yeah.
How nice of them.
Because they were kind of like outdoors and indoors.
That's like my lifestyle, outdoors and indoors.
Right. So they came down because they wanted to come with you.
And why did they want to come with me?
Comfortable being with you, and they figured you need some help.
Oh, what kind of help do they give me?
Oh, they bring like good energy. And they try to keep things clear, meaning that...
Clear and calm and connected, or...
Clear in that there's no fuzziness there. This is what they're saying.
How many?
Fuzziness in terms of energy, right?
Uh-huh. Okay, clear energy. How many are there?
Oh, let's see. I'd say about 10.
Oh, interesting. And they're about 4 inches high?
Oh, let's see.
Like 7 inches, 7 or 8 inches.
Yeah, well, 6-7 inches.
And do they live like a family and have more fairies, or are they just the same 10 that have been with me since Erie? I've been in this house, I've been away from Erie for about 40 years, so they've been obviously with me for a very long time.
Yes, they have been. And they don't age like we do.
Uh-huh.
They age very slowly, right? So they're still very young looking, okay?
Like me.
Right.
Wait, that wasn't supposed to be funny. But go ahead.
Okay, so theirs is more of a community in terms of, they're saying, it's not really families.
So more of a community.
Yeah, it's more of a community. And they kind of recruit fairies.
Oh.
Recruit repelling fairies.
So they recruited more over the years, or that's the same 10 I brought with me?
Now, I do hate to say this, but some of them have actually
Died?
passed on, right?
Oh, no.
Yeah, and so, okay, the 10 that are here now are a little bit more than originally were here. But like I said, some have passed on and they've recruited others. Because sometimes, I don't know, there's just fairies wandering around looking for a home.
I could see that.
And not that they put out great signs saying, fairies wanted. No, but the fairies that are outside wandering around know that this is a potential home.
So can I ask what the fairies need to look like? What do they look like? Do we need to describe the physical appearance?
Well, okay, now I see them as little people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, others may not see them that way.
How would they describe themselves?
They themselves basically describe themselves as little bits of energy.
Okay.
And they can change shapes too.
So they shapeshift. Do they change shape depending on who's looking at them to be seen, or?
Yeah,
Noticing
I mean, that's to say, I see them, like I said, as little people,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that they've got 2 arms, 2 legs, a body, and a head, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else may not see them quite like that, meaning that they could be squatter, or I guess have different facial features, I see them as having regular length hair,
Mm-hmm.
not long hair, not short hair. And they themselves see themselves as however they want to be seen by the person who's actually not doing the seeing, but who's the object of the viewing.
So if I see them as little, like bits of energy, that's fine, because that's kind of how I sense them, as little bits of energy.
Right. And because whatever they do, they have these, like for their rappelling, they need ropes, they need hooks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those are not little bits of energy. Those you actually can see, or at least I can see.
You can see them, right?
Right.
Oh, it's really quite interesting. So you can see them climbing with the little ropes and
And
stuff.
probably they could see themselves climbing
Mm-hmm.
with their ropes and hooks,
Yeah.
And for some reason they've got buckets too. I don't know why. Why do they have buckets? Oh, they say to carry stuff from one place to another.
Their stuff or energy or.
No, their stuff. It could be not necessarily liquid.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like food, clothing, an extra hat,
Yeah. Right, exactly.
extra ropes.
Right.
And do they have names? Do they call themselves anything?
Um,
Should I address them as anything in particular?
they don't seem to care.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Well-
I mean, individually, they don't, they're saying they don't really call themselves by any name, because how they communicate between themselves is mostly telepathically.
Okay.
So they don't need a name.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
They would just intuitively know who they're communicating to.
right, exactly, yeah. So that's why they don't have any name. But they're saying, if we want to give them names, they'd be most happy to take them. I mean, you could just call them A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, or I don't know. That's kind of like.
That's okay. I don't need to name them. That's not that important to me, but to know they're there and to thank them for keeping my energy clear in my house and working with me, that's awesome.
Right. That seems to be kind of like their main mission, keeping the atmosphere.
And how do they do that? I know they're climbing around and stuff, but actually, what is their like magical aspect that keeps the energy clear here?
Okay, I'm asking them, how do you do this? And they say basically their presence.
Just their presence?
The presence does it.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. They carry a certain energetic vibration of clarity. And maybe being Mountaineer fairies, the Mountaineer is clear.
Yeah, look how sunny it's getting outside.
And just as we're talking about to these fairies. Is there anything specific that they want me to know?
They're saying something about the back room. What are they saying about the back room?
The back room's where I often eat. For those that are listening in, it's off of my kitchen. It has a table and lots of window space right out onto the deck.
I don't know. They're saying you should pay more attention to things in there somehow. But exactly what you should pay attention to, they're not really saying. I don't know.
Are things not clear enough back there? Do I need to actually do something to clarify it more?
Things seem to be less clear there than other rooms. And
is it because is it the artwork?
Oh, there's no artwork back there.
There is, but none of mine.
Oh, I see. Interesting.
So I could swap out the artwork with my artwork.
Ah.
There's other people's artwork back there.
Huh. Okay, well, this would mean that somehow the repelling fairies are communicating with
my art fairies.
Art fairies, right? And yeah, and they're saying, yes, this is true, they do communicate. And they both contribute to making the atmosphere clearer. So it could be that you put some of your artwork in the back room. It would sort of like help to clear the back room, which is what the repelling fairies are talking about.
Okay, I can do that. I got plenty of pieces of art. Do they have a preference of paintings or photography?
No, they're saying both are possible. Both would do.
Okay.
You can put in some of each.
All right. Very exciting. Very interesting.
Yes, it is quite interesting. I had no idea they'd be telling me all this stuff.
I had no idea either. The repelling fairies, is there anything else they would like me to know, or could I ask if they're specific to my house, or does each person have their own types of fairies?
Well, okay, I think because these came with you from Erie, they were indoor and outdoor ones, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the type of fairy depends upon the activities they like to do.
Oh, okay.
So because these ones really liked, climbing, mm-hmm. and your house has got really high ceilings, which makes it easier for them mm-hmm. to climb around. That's not to say that yours would be the only house where you'd find repelling fairies. Mm-hmm. No. I think they kind of like choose where they want to live based on those specific conditions. Mm-hmm. Okay? Yeah.
So do they have something else they want to say, or can we switch to the art fairies?
Okay. They want people to know that they're very likable and they're here to help.
All fairies, or just the repelling fairies?
Well, they're speaking for themselves,
oh,
right?
Okay.
And the fairies that they know.
Okay, so just the 10 that are here really want to help.
No, man. Also, they're speaking for the art fairies,
okay,
and the cat attendant fairies. It's not like they're completely isolated, right? Mm-hmm. Because they have contact with fairies that are just wandering around outside too.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like the dolphins have, they have contact with fish and whales and other dolphin species. And
right, yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask also, just before we move on to the art fairies, how long have the repelling fairies or fairies in general been around on this earth?
Oh my God. Oh, for forever.
Forever? Like, have they predated humans?
Definitely.
Predated other types of human forms? Like the physiotherapy Atlanteans and the other groups that have been here before? Are they older than the dolphins?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. This is what they're telling me, yeah. They're not showing me any evidence why. They just know this.
Were they part of an original inhabitants of the earth?
Yeah, they're saying, yeah, they could have been.
They could have been.
They could have been, definitely. Okay, theirs is more an oral culture, right? They don't have any stored records. So everything's just passed down, fairy generation to fairy generation.
So
they've got legends of going back,
mm-hmm.
The original fairies who had been here since before time began, right?
Before time began.
Yeah.
So they go back before time. And
where did they come from?
In that etheric existence.
Yes.
Because did they ever have a physical existence? Where they were as dense as like humans are now. So
no, but they could be. What I mean is, if they wanted to, they did that.
Oh, they could have been at any time.
Yeah.
And is that what we would know more as like gnomes and pixies and trolls and things like that, or is...
Yeah, I mean those are all different shapes.
Right.
Of fairies,
So, on to the art fairies, unless they really want to say something else.
No, they just want to say thank you for giving them this platform.
Oh, thank you for showing up. Thank you for asking to be on it.
And now they're back to swinging on their ropes and climbing.
If you could see Diana, she's watching them all over the room, having a great time. For those of you who don't know, I'm a painter and a photographer, and basically I'm an artist. I work mostly in the abstract or visionary platforms, and my paintings and my photography have fairies and energies. They're not really my paintings. They're paintings that channeled through me, or photography that's called to me to participate in the creation of, and they have energies of their own and fairies of their own. And the art fairies apparently are very connected to the repelling fairies, and I'm just kind of curious what the art fairies might have to say.
Okay, so the art fairies are, the way I see them, they're actually a little bit bigger than the repelling fairies, and they're always sitting in the corners of the frames, but they're really intimately connected with the energy of painting.
Does each painting have one fairy or more than one?
Nah, it looks like each painting's got like one fairy, and they all know each other, right? Because they can see each other from wherever they are. They're not traveling around like the repelling fairies. They stick with the painting.
And were the fairies there when the paintings were being created?
No, they're saying that they existed as concepts before the painting.
The fairies did.
Yeah.
So when the paintings were completed, the fairies were completed, were manifested.
Right, kind of like materialized.
They materialized to go with the painting.
Yeah, yeah.
And do they travel with the painting when it goes to its new home?
Definitely.
So they're with the painting for the rest of their life?
Yes.
And what is their role at being with the painting?
To kind of protect it.
To protect the painting.
Yeah, protect the energy of the painting.
The energy of the painting.
The integrity of it.
So, does the integrity of these, can it shift? Can it grow? Can it get more, does the fairy have anything to do with that? Like can an energy, like sometimes when you focus on things, you can amplify the energy of it. And I'm just wondering if having a fairy with the energy of this painting and staring at it longer, or any of these paintings or photography, if they actually shift with the time, shift and become more potent, or if they kind of stay the way they are.
Okay, so what they're saying is that they themselves do not do anything to increase or decrease the energy of the paint, but they are there as kind of like intermediaries between the viewers and the painting and its energy. So if somebody's coming around and looking at the painting and really is really getting something from the painting, and by doing so is increasing the painting's energy, then the fairies are able to kind of like stabilize that. It doesn't, the added energy just doesn't dissipate when the viewer walks away.
Oh, so they're sort of like there to take that increased magnification of the energy and maintain it.
Yeah. Like I said, they're there to protect the paintings.
Right.
And conversely, if there's somebody who comes around, somebody who's looking at one of these paintings and is thinking, oh, yeah, I don't know, I don't really like it, I don't get any good energy from this. They're not detracting energy, but they're putting negative energy into the painting. So the fairies say they kind of like do something to propel this person away.
Oh, nice. Nice. So the paintings would have then, if they were to go to a new home when they're sold.
Well, first of all, the fairies would have to agree that this is a good home for the painting. Okay. Otherwise, I don't think that they would let the painting go there.
So it's like a steward / representative of the painting, like a salesperson.
Steward is probably a good word.
Mm-hmm. Steward of the painting on multiple levels. Very interesting.
Yeah, isn't it? So I think this is the major reason why they actually stay with them. And they're saying, yes, this is it. Because their mission is to protect.
Now, are they on all paintings, or are they on the paintings that I'm working with?
I don't know.
Not all paintings in my house, but all the paintings that are painted anywhere. Like we had talked earlier about the paintings not necessarily having the right energy in the back room. They're created by other people, not by myself. And I know when these are created, they're like channeled information that it's coming through some, energetic divine portal. And so maybe that's part of the attraction for fairies. I really don't know.
Yeah, okay. So they're saying that no, not all paintings have got fairies on them. Only ones that need to be protected.
And they need to be protected. Why?
Because of the specific energy that's in them.
But
there's some paintings that are not created with any kind of specific energy in them.
Okay, so the intention with what something's created, but also, do these paintings have some purpose in the grand transformation or that's going on in the world right now? And is that why they're here? Or is it just because that was my intention when I was creating them, was to make these consciousness shifts for myself or whoever looked at them?
Right, okay. I think that they're saying it's some of both. Mm-hmm. It's both those things. But the main thing is kind of like the energy in the painting. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason it's there,
Mm-hmm. So if someone was to have one of these paintings in their house, the fairy would come along and the energy would be there sharing itself into that house or that home or office or whatever space.
Yes, and they're quite willing to relocate, provided that where they're going is where they want to be going.
Okay.
Although at the moment they really like it here now.
My fairy friendly house.
Or because they've got the repellers here too,
Right.
So. Yeah,
it's a fairy friendly house. I guess. Other fairies in the house. So are there other fairies do they have any advice for me or words for me? I understand that they want to stay here, they like it here, but I'm creating a lot of paintings, and so even if they stayed here, they would get covered up or put maybe in another room. So is there I want them to know I appreciate them, and I'm thrilled that they're there, and I'm thrilled that they feel and protect and steward the paintings the way they do, because I can sense it. I feel like this really tight bond with them. But at the same time, I need to be free to create a whole bunch more, and I want their help.
Right. Okay. So they're saying when the time is right, they will go.
Okay. Is there any other information they have for me?
Let's see. With regards to what? Anything at all?
Anything at all, or specific to the paintings they're with, or why they're here, why they're with me? Any information at all, I guess.
Oh, why they're with you is because you actually created them. You're the one that
I understand.
Produced the energy.
Okay, so but there's got to be something about me that's more specific, because other people might be creating energy too. Like, what's different about my energy?
That you have these fairies with the paintings?
Yeah.
Well, other paintings would have other fairies too.
Right, but they said not all do.
Oh yeah, no, okay. Because you were creating them for specific purpose, right? Let's see. What are they saying? Sometimes the purposes, sometimes the reasons why people create art aren't necessarily for, I don't want to say the right purposes, but purposes that don't foster like good energy.
Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm doing, is fostering good energy through my art
Right.
creations, and then they recognize that and they come and become stewards.
Yes.
Is it possible for a bunch of them to show up during the process of creating paintings, or do they really want to wait till I've finished?
Okay. Well, now they're kind of different than the repelling fairies because they existed as concepts.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be I'm not quite understanding what they're saying, because it could be maybe they're shape-shifting and the concept is the actual fairy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when the painting itself is realized, that's when they kind of like materialize.
Okay.
So it's not that they weren't there before and they just suddenly appeared. Maybe they were there all along.
Okay. In a different form.
Right, yeah. Because it wouldn't make any sense then if fairies live a long time, right? And
like hundreds of years? 500 years?
yeah, a long time. And so, they can actually go from they can disentangle themselves from a painting or work of art and move to another one if they so choose. And why would they choose? Maybe the energy from the painting becomes corrupt somehow.
Corrupt or
dies off.
Yeah, or there's just new energy being created all the time, right? So
Yeah.
a newer painting might actually contain a newer energy.
Right. Or a higher vibrational energy.
Yeah, higher
right?
vibrational energy is probably a great way to describe it.
Right.
Perfect.
So it's not like they're specific to one painting. Right? They, like the repelling fairies, have been around for a long time, and they've seen many different energies in paintings.
So are there any... Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it?
Yes.
So they could be hopping from artist to artist.
No, but they don't do this willy-nilly, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, they have to have reasons. It's not like, 1 week they're over here, next week they're over there. No, they're saying it doesn't work that way.
Well, for example, like I have this book here from this artist called Hilma of Klint, and she was a fabulous visionary artist that really never got her credit until 100 years later when everybody realized her work. And then she's been on worldwide tour, but no, she's not making any financial gain off of her vision that she expressed all those years ago, but she's finally getting credit for being this visionary. Would those fairies have been with her art this whole time, just waiting? Or have they left those paintings now and they're moved on?
Okay, I don't know if I can actually ask them that.
Okay.
However, the ones that are here are saying that they don't just give up like that.
Mm-hmm. So they might stay with painting for hundreds of years.
Right. Yeah. Because they see something like we don't see.
Mm-hmm. Well, like Starry Night is a very famous
Yeah.
painting with a fairy for sure, right?
Yeah.
And that's been there, well, not eons, but quite a while now.
Right.
But has it been the same fairy?
Well, this is like, I don't know, it gets off into another kind of realm.
Mm-hmm.
Because different paintings have got different energies, that painting, even though it's got a specific energy, right? There's lots of different strands in there, in that it's not all one kind of higher vibrational energy. It's really complex. I was going to say some of it's maybe like negative energy or less,
Lower vibrating energy.
Yeah, right. But it all the different vibrational energies have not mixed together to form one. They're all kind of like layered.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So though the energy concepts that become fairies for those, it seems to me, and well, these ones don't.
The ones here in this room.
Yeah, they don't have any direct contact with fairies like that, but they're saying, yeah, they're much more complicated.
The Starry Night one is much more complicated because
and the fairy, there's more than one there.
Okay.
The fairies there are I don't know, you got to be very careful around them somehow.
Well, there's been a lot of people who've looked at those and been in the presence of those paintings, and who knows what energies were going on back then.
Oh yeah,
when it was created.
True. Yeah. That adds to the energy too.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you need the fairies to protect the paintings.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Do they have any advice for me going forward?
They're saying keep creating. Now, this does not necessarily mean keep painting. They're saying creating. Mm-hmm. Okay, so
creating podcasts, creating photography,
creating
anything. Yeah, I mean creating. It's right. I have no intention. Let them know I have no intention of stopping my creative.
Yeah, no,
side.
They know that. They know that.
Awesome.
But they just want to emphasize that even though you may feel now that you want them to get new homes, right? They're saying don't worry.
So I have a question about the art books and the prints. Do they actually capture the same energy as the paintings, or do the fairies travel with the book as a whole, or in individual pages with art pieces on them? Or when there's a print, are there fairies or are there fairy energies?
That's a very good question. Now, they are saying that the pictures in the books are basically captures of energy at a certain point in time. So the energy in the of prints in the book, the energy doesn't change.
Right, and that energy is of the painting and of the fairy itself.
Yes, it's of the painting and the fairy. And because it doesn't change, it actually doesn't need protection.
Okay.
There's no, if you're looking at the book, right? The energy there is whole. It's encapsulated, right? It's not, what's the word? It's not organic anymore. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's fixed. So whatever a viewer is thinking cannot change the energy, either positively or negatively.
So it's like frozen in time. And then
so there's no real live fairy needed to protect the energy of the reproduction, because the energy of the reproduction doesn't change. However, kind of like they've got I don't know what the word for it. There are so like copies of the fairies attached to the prints in the books. Mm-hmm. Okay, why copies? Because they just want to make sure that the books are okay.
Okay, so each page, each new little picture in the books has its original copy of the fairy that came with that painting.
Right.
And that's not...
It's like a piece of that fairy.
Right, a piece of energy of that fairy.
Right.
And that's not necessarily all books or all art books. It's just the ones, like we talked before, that have been created especially with the intention or energy.
Right, exactly. And the fairies that are answering, talking to me now, right? They are specifically talking about your books.
My books, okay.
Yeah.
So there's little fragments of the individual fairies on each, attached to each print in the book, and the books are secure, frozen in time with their energy, so they can't be tainted or enhanced. But the paintings, on the other hand, have live fairies and can be their energies can be amplified.
Yeah, their energies can be increased or also decreased, but their fairies are there to make sure that doesn't happen.
That the decrease doesn't happen,
right.
But they will allow for and facilitate the amplification.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
and also part of what they want to see is actually if there's a greater distribution of the print books, they actually see that even though people are not viewing the
the original
paintings, they do see an increase in energy if the response to the print books is positive. Mm-hmm. So they're telling me that.
Oh.
So there is a connection, right?
So the more distribution of a print, the more energy amplification is there is of the original painting.
Yes, possibly, right? If it's
So basically, if you own the painting and it's got good energy and the fairies with it, and somebody sells a book with 1 million copies, that painting automatically becomes more energetically valuable.
Okay, if you want to put it that way, but you can also think of it as the energy is now of a greater frequency.
Right. So, yes, a greater frequency. So if you owned that painting, you might actually, and it was hanging on your wall, you might actually come in and notice that you get more energy out of that painting.
Right. Yes.
And it's helped, when you get positive energy out of that painting.
That kind of like transfers itself to you and everything around the painting, too.
Right, exactly. So it's basically, a live energy force.
Right. That's kind of cool.
It is kind of cool, but it speaks to the one of the reasons to acquire original art.
That is very true.
Versus prints.
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe versus nothing at all.
Right. I guess. I mean, I like having stuff on my wall.
Well, yeah, too. But you might like it aesthetically, but it also might actually be enhancing energy or empathy. The energy might, like if you're sitting in your room and 1,000 people are looking at these books, your energy's raising if you're in front of the painting. I mean, it's just like
That's right.
It's just like, so the collectors of these artworks that end up in books somewhere are actually just basking in increased amplification of their energy of their painting, and their own vibration would be
This is actually quite curious. Okay.
Raising too.
Right. Because a friend of mine in Vancouver he's obsessed with this question. It's like, what is art, right? And he comes back to Andy Warhol. According to him, Andy Warhol is not art, right? But how many reproductions of Andy Warhol prints are there around the world that people have? In their houses, in books, in museums, whatever, right? They're all looking at this and they're thinking, wow, this is great. So that actually could be contributing to what we, meaning, I guess, collectively perceive as the worth of an Andy Warhol painting.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
all this increased
right.
higher vibrational energy.
Right. So the monetary value of it it's increasing and amplifying as well. At the same time, the energy is amplifying. That brings me to a lot of people could use that amplified money that are artists. Certainly Van Gogh could have used the millions of dollars that his artwork, and maybe he would have created another 7 years of work had he not been poverty stricken. It's very difficult to say, and don't really want to go back and change history, but at the same time, there's a lot of artists who, like Hilma Clinton, who we mentioned earlier, who, 100 years after they've created art, it gets appreciated, and the monetary amplification happens at that time and not before, and so they really sacrifice their entire life to create this energy, to share it, to create it. And, is there a way to speed up that process of...
Is this a question that you're actually asking the art fairies?
Well, I'm asking the art fairies, is there a way to equalize that? Speed up is the wrong word, but equalize that process so that, 2 and 3 generations after someone's no longer here, the amplification of the money shows up for their art and the appreciation shows up. I guess there is a way. I'm talking and I'm answering the question halfway by saying, oh, well, there's the internet, you can post it on the internet and get it out there. But do the fairies have any say on that? Any understanding of what the entire impact of that art could be, not just protecting it and being a steward of it, but also the eventual amplification of it and its valuation in monetary energy?
They're finding this a really kind of hard question. Because even though, they exist in a world which is basically driven by money, they don't deal with it, right? To live their ordinary lives, they don't deal with money.
Right, and it doesn't have to be money. There's an exchange there that happens not when the artist is alive, often, and an appreciation like whether it's money or, other kinds of generous, something that brings great ease to that artist, they can continue to work.
Okay, well, they're saying that from their perspective, right, the worth, this is from their perspective, right, the worth in quotes of the painting or artwork is basically determined by the vibrational frequency of the energy, and the complexity of that vibrational frequency.
But it also then can be amplified.
Oh yeah, no, that their answer takes that into consideration also, that it's not static, that it's organic, and
right.
It could be increasing, could also be decreasing, but it changes over time too.
Right, but that doesn't really specifically address the commodity exchange of the artwork.
No.
That of the commodity exchange of the artwork and its energetic value in respect to the facilitator, which would be the artist of its creation.
Yeah, they don't know anything about that. That's what they're saying.
All right. Okay. Well, they have a higher purpose, right? They're thinking about the big picture and the big picture only.
Their mission there is to protect the energy of the work of art.
Okay.
So
are there do they have anything else to say, and should we move on?
No, they're just saying, it was fascinating talking to you, and this is them talking to us.
Yeah.
It's fascinating talking to you, and we hope you gained some new insights.
Oh, definitely. It's very, very nice of them to show up and to actually share their information, and I'm very happy that they're here. And I don't know if they know, but I often, give them a nod when I'm walking back by a piece. And I'll be taking some artworks into my back room to...
Oh, good. Yeah, they're saying yes. Definitely do that.
Change the upgrade or fix the energy back there.
Yeah, but if for some reason you need the front and the back to be kind of like the same.
Okay. All right. No worries. I can handle that. We'll balance it out.
Right.
Tell them thank you very, very, very much, or I can tell them directly.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It was really fun.
Okay, so now they're just waving goodbye.
Ta-ta, till later. And they're all sitting there on their paintings, just hanging out.
Yeah. And now they think, now we'll have a spot of tea.
Oh, how fun. Tea and artwork. So, is there someone else that would like to come forward, or is...
let's see. Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness. Okay. These fairies are usually not very talkative, at least the ones that I know. But they're omnipresent in that my cats, and I see your cat, Ollie, which is here now, they have these attendants, and they are fairies since they're kind of smallish, maybe like 7-8 inches tall, but they all have the same costume, which is kind of weird.
What is the costume like?
Okay, it's a stiff white A-line. It's not a dress because they're not women. They're not men either, right? But it's basically, it looks like it's an A-line suit, long sleeved, and goes all the way down to the ground, and it's stiff so that you can see that it's A-line. Mm-hmm. That's what they wear.
And how many of them are there?
One per cat.
Oh, one per cat.
Yeah.
Oh, does Ollie's have a name? Ollie's looking around like, what?
Okay, it's Ollie 2.
Ollie 2? Ollie 2. Like Ollie also, or Ollie number 2?
They have the same name as the cat.
Oh, I see.
Right? So mine are called, there's Nocholo and there's Nocholo 2, the attendant. Okay.
So they're cat attendants.
They're cat attendants.
And what do they do for the cats? Or should we...
I'm not quite sure because I've never really seen them do anything other than just be standing there beside them.
Oh.
But it could be, and I don't watch my cats all the time, right? So it could be that they're doing stuff for them when I'm not watching.
Oh, okay.
But I do know that one thing that they do help me with is that when I do some of the meditations that I do, I include my cats. And with some of them, you actually have to look inside their bodies and see their chakras. So the attendants actually kind of like Vanna White.
They show you
look,
around.
Look, these are this is the red one. This is the orange one. This is like.
Oh, that's so funny. So they show you around.
Yeah, that's right. But they're willing. They were actually willing to talk to us.
Okay.
But maybe we can do that next time.
Okay. Awesome. Hey, well, thank you, Diana, for facilitating a great conversation with the fairies, the repelling fairies and the art fairies. Who would have thought, right? Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? Exactly.
That's all for this episode of the 1 to 9 podcast. Thank you for listening, and please sign up for our newsletter at 1to9podcast.com.